Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September meeting of the Finance and Assets Committee, and a special welcome to those people watching online. And hopefully you enjoy the meeting. If the live stream does go down, we will adjourn the meeting to see if we can reconstitute that line, but hopefully that won't happen. Obviously, there is a long agenda tonight, so we're looking maybe to try and take a break at about 2 hours. About 6:30 if we're still going then. So the second item is public question time. Do we have any? Thanks. There are no public questions, in which case we move on to item 2, apologies and substitutions. And I think before Jane comes in with the apologies and substitutions, because there have been some changes to the published agenda. If I explain those first, especially for members of the public watching online. Councillor Anna Bailey has replaced Councillor Lay. Councillor Crispin Ambrose-Smith is no longer a substitute. Councillor Christine Whelan has replaced Councillor Charlotte Kane as a substantive member, and Councillor Charlotte Kane has replaced Councillor Caroline Shepherd as a substitute. Those are the changes, so hopefully people at home understand that. Now I'll pass over to Jane for the actual substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies are received from Councillor Bill Hunt and Councillor Mary Wade, and Councillor Martin Goodall and Councillor Charlotte Kane are in attendance and substitutes.
Yeah. We believe Councillor Miller is on his way from Cambridge. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest they wish to declare? I'm seeing nothing, in which case I move on to item 4, which are the minutes of the meeting of the 27th of June. Are there any? Councillor Christine Whelan.
Just a query really. I wasn't obviously at the last meeting because I wasn't on the committee then, but on page 10, in response to a question from Councillor Miller, the strategic planning manager found it had not been possible to install solar panels on Eastbay South in Littleport. I thought Eastbay South was in Ely, not Littleport. Am I correct in assuming that?
So that should be Eastbay North then, yeah, rather than
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Ely, because Eastbay North does have solar panels.
Okay.
Eastbay North has got so. Yeah, I thought they had. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, can we just check what the correct wording is and circulate that to members, please, afterwards? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Item 5 is Chair's announcements. I've covered the changes in membership. There is also another note that the page numbering is slightly different than they should be, so members might have picked that up. When we come to the initial items, we will mention the page numbers that we're looking at, again, for those watching at home and for hopefully members. So if you're following, if you're not able to track that, then please shout, you know, we're looking at the wrong page numbers. And the only other item I've got is we've got Emma Grimmer and Nigel Ankers here, who will speak to us on the ECTC accounts. Councillor Trapp.
But when we're using page numbers, are we using the total page number? I mean, not the, okay, so that's the easiest one.
Yeah, we are using the total page numbers in the agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you very much.
Councillor Dupre.
And Chair, can I just say how good it is to have through pagination after many years of asking for it. And when we get it actually to match up with the front of the agenda, it'll be even better.
I'm sure we will get there next time. So that's Chair's announcement. So we'll move on to item 6, which is the East Cambridgeshire Trading Company accounts and annual governance statement for 2023-2024. And if I can ask Emma Grimmer and Nigel Ankers to present, please. And good evening, Councillor Miller. Thank
you. Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So East Cambridge Trading Company financial statements, year end 31 March 2024. I'll just walk members through the report, if that's okay. On pages 20 and 21, that's the director's report, which states the director's responsibilities with respect to these statements. Pages 22 through 24 is the auditor's report. On page 22, Price Bailey confirmed they've conducted an audit on the statements and notes, and in their opinion, they do give a true and fair view of the company's affairs at 31st of March 2024 and have been properly prepared in accordance with the latest regulations. Price Bailey do make reference to note 1.18, which details the current challenges and uncertainties and predictions for the longer term projects that we've got at the moment, and noted that this does lead to a material uncertainty in the going concern principle. This is not unusual. ECTC has had this phrase in its accounts previously, from an audit point of view, they are reliant on our projections, and if our projections prove to be wrong, there's a chance that that could put the going concern concept at risk, and this will most likely happen factors outside of our control, such as market forces. On page 25 is the profit and loss account. I won't go through all the numbers, as overall there's no change from the numbers presented in the management accounts for 23-24 at the last committee, but in summary, a loss of 854,000 after tax compared with a profit of 166,000 in the previous year, and the difference there being caused by a much lower level of house sales this year at 10 compared with 82 last year. On page 26, we have the balance sheet. Again, no changes from the management accounts, but at the moment, at the end of March, the company was in a net liability position of 628,000. Page 28 confirms no other changes in the overall equity of the business. Page 29, excuse me, cash flow statement reconciles the opening balance of 211,000 with the closing balance of 481,000. And very generally, the company generated 1.6 million of cash from its trade activities, and then 1.3 million of that was used to repay loans and interest, to leave that increase of 271,000 for the year. And then on, excuse me, on pages 30 through 46 are the notes to the accounts. I think the main ones would be note 1.18 on pages 34 to 35, which is that note about going concern and the work that we've done to justify that and the challenges that are involved within it. Note 3 on page 37, the analysis of wages and staff, showing an overall reduction of 1 person through the year, but an increase of 61,000 on the wage bill, largely as a result of last year's pay award, which was £1,925 per person. And finally, note 14 on page 22, there's a typo there. That column on the left should be 2024, not 2023. So we'll get that amended. But it breaks down the borrowing from council. At the end of the year, we had a £5 million loan outstanding to council, and it breaks it down into repayments between 1 and 2 years and 2 to 5 years. It's not a contractual payment. It's all due technically by March 31, 2027, but we've gone with substance over form, and they're the current forecast of when we are likely to repay the loan. So that's the way we've presented it in the balance sheet. So I'll hand over to Emma to do the annual government statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. So members may recall that a recent internal audit carried out by the council's internal auditor recommended that the company produce an annual statement. And this statement before you this evening has been approved by board, and it's here for you to note. It also closes off the final outstanding action that we had with the audit outstanding, but it's still in time for the timeframe that I'd agreed with the auditors. So I don't intend to go through this statement in any detail. Members should be familiar with all of the information contained in the statement, as it mostly comes from either the business plan or the shareholder agreement itself. So pages 47 through to 50 provide some of the background information, and this is all information that's currently contained in the business plan. Pages 51 through 56. This is, members will have seen the shareholder agreement before. But what I've done in this statement is pick out the key elements of the shareholder agreement and put a column in compliance against it, whether or not there's anything that's happened or changed. And then obviously 24, 25, anything upcoming or done, which members will have been aware of. Page 456, we set out some of the summary of the changes that were agreed between the council and the company back in May of this year. So it's just a summary point there. On page 56 through to 59 and 60 is the strategic risk register. Now, this is already in the company's business plan, and I report on it at every board meeting. So this is just setting out in one key area any changes that occurred during 23-24 and a narrative on how any upcoming changes or what gives some assurance around the strategic risk register. And then finally, pages 61 through to 65 is just a summary of what was in the 23-24 business plan and provide some narrative. So I don't intend to say any more than that, then, Chair. So we're happy to take questions.
Thank you for that. Members, any comments on that? Councillor Dupre.
Just one question, if I may, on page 49. It's a question I've asked over the years. It's the question about the table and Barton Road, Ely Kings Row, and the affordable housing provision, which was 2 on site and 1 contribution in lieu. What has happened to the contribution in lieu? Has it been spent, and if so, where?
Through you, Chair, the money was paid from ECT to the council, and I think it'd be appropriate if I defer the question as to whether or not it's been spent to the Director of Community who's responsible for that service.
No, it hasn't been spent to date.
It's quite a long time ago.
Chair, I'm happy to respond.
How long is that sum been
I
with the council?
believe it was paid in 2017 or 2018, Councillor Dupre. But the nature of the payment is that it must be spent on affordable housing off-site, and the council can use it to deliver a unit off-site. And I think without straying into anything that probably should be more of an exempt session, I'm actually happy to answer that question exempt if you're happy for me to do that. When we go in later for the management accounts, I'll answer that question then. Thank you.
Thank you for that, I've got Councillor Bovingdon.
Can I just, excuse me, can I just ask when Eden Square completions are due?
We're projecting that it will be build complete at the end of October.
Councillor Kane.
Yeah, on page 16 of the accounts, there's a reference to restrictions. The cash flow forecast, it says, will be sufficient to be able to continue as a going concern during restrictions and once restrictions are fully lifted. What restrictions are they?
Excuse me, I do apologise, Councillor Kane. I'm not sure what restrictions that's making reference to. That looks like a typo. So I'll have to check that and have that changed. Thank you.
It also refers to, on page 12, to land for sale.
Use a bit in page numbers.
Or the 31 for the through pagination, sorry. At the bottom of that, it says the company's entered into a promotional agreement to sell land. Are you able to tell us where that land is?
That's Kennet.
All right. All right, it's the Kennet. Yeah. Okay, so you don't know how much you'll get until they've sold on. Okay. And there is a typo on the sofa, on on 26, page 26, non-current asset 8, should be an S, I think. And then for future reports, I think it would be helpful, you say in 3.1 what the auditors think of the accounts. I think I would personally find it helpful to have something about what the directors think, because after all, it's the directors presenting them to us.
Noted.
Okay. Councillor Trapp.
Just one small question on page 48. Middle, it says, Ely Market, blah, blah, blah. This is income that the council would not be able to achieve if it directly managed the service. Surely if it managed the service, I mean, it would get the income from the market stallholders.
Through you, Chair, that relates to the income that Markets is charged for the lease of the land of the Market Square. So no, this income wouldn't come if it was an in-house provision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. I'm seeing no other hands. This is just for noting, so we've noted it. Thank you, Emma, Nigel. Item 7 is the medium-term financial strategy update. And I'll hand over to Ian.
Thank you, Chair. The council continues to have a balanced budget for 25-26. But with the fair funding review now anticipated in 26-27, we currently have a savings requirement for that year. As detailed in the figures in the report, this shows the costs of the revised waste service collection from April 26, but not at this point any potential income for that service. The papers also recommend introducing a £70 fine for the non-reporting of council tax changes, something that is intended to introduce across the whole ARP partnership. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian, for that. Members, any comments on this? Councillor Goodall.
Thank you, Chair. Ian, the £70 charge, would that be cost neutral? Will it cover the administration and the wages required to deal with these fines going out?
I don't know the answer to that and I can definitely look into that, but I believe it will be, yes.
If I can come in there, I would imagine those are ARP costs, aren't they? More than our costs, yeah. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. Also about the £70 fine. Clearly, if people owe the council money, they ought to pay it and they ought to be encouraged to pay it. My only concern with this is that unless you live in the very south of the district, you no longer have access as a resident to independent advice. And I'm quite concerned about taking money from people where they do, as I understand it, have certain rights in terms of appeal rights and so on. But a lot of people mess up with things like this accidentally rather than deliberately, and can easily be put upon or frightened by demands for money. And if they don't have access to independent advice to support them, I think that puts them in a very invidious position. I'm not going to oppose this on that ground, but I would like to point out that for some people this will be quite difficult and they will not get the support they need if the situation is not of their making.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Councillor Miller.
Chair, I would observe in reply to that, if there's any confusion over what a person's council tax liabilities are, I'm sure ARP will be more than happy to help.
Thank you for that. I mean, I would certainly hope that, and I'm sure they will, that where somebody has made a genuine error mistake, then that wouldn't necessarily result in a fine. We're looking at people who are deliberately sort of pushing the game or not advising us, I think. We have, excuse me, sorry. We have got two items here. 2.1 is to note and 2.2 is to approve that introduction of that £70. I'm happy to propose that from the chair. Do I have a seconder for that?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to second that
Okay,
proposal.
thank you, councillor Goodall. In that case, can we move to the vote? All those in favour of 2.2 that we approve the introduction of a £70 civil fine to those residents that disclose incorrect information regarding their circumstances around council tax discounts. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. So that's item 7, and then item 8 is back to Ian again, which is the budget monitoring report.
Thank you. Overall, at the end of the first quarter, we are forecasting a small underspend on revenue. This is made up of a number of over and underspends as detailed in the report. On capital, we're also predicting a 2 million underspend. Again, this is detailed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for that. Members, any comments, questions? This is purely for noting. Sorry, councillor Kane.
Thank you. I know on page 77, it says that we have staff vacancies in the housing strategic team. I'm guessing that's a couple of vacancies.
You're having trouble hearing, councillor?
Yes, could he bring his microphone a bit closer,
Okay.
please, or speak a bit louder? His voice is very quiet, and I know he speaks quietly, but you can hardly hear him, sorry.
No, that's fine. No, we want Ian to be heard, and we want you to be able to hear him. So
Yeah.
thanks for raising that.
Yeah, sorry, I was asking about the staff vacancies in the housing strategic team and whether that's having any impact on the delivery from that team.
Thank you. So we do have staff in those, but we procure them via an SLA. So our strategic housing advisor, and we procure from Fenland. So there's cost savings there, and our community-led development advisor through locality on a 1-day-a-week basis. So because we don't need a full-time person at the moment on that role. So we have got people covering them. They're just not full-time. So there's some savings there.
I get that. I'm asking what impact it's having on delivery.
It's not.
Okay, members, any other? Councillor Bailey.
Just to say, I recall our colleagues opposite wanting to actually build the vacancy lag into the permanent budget. So, yeah, it's just to note.
Councillor Dupre.
Which remains a sensible budget strategy. However, my question on that point is, if the vacancies are having no discernible effect on the performance of the service, why are we carrying them?
So we keep the posts on the establishment in case demand increases. So we need to increase the amount of resource, or whether if those SLAs are no longer available, then we would need to recruit in-house. So we keep them there to provide for that backup.
Okay, members, I'm seeing no other hands, and so this is for noting. So I think we've duly noted it. So we move on to item 9, which is the Hedgehog Recovery Design Guidance Supplementary Planning Document, and I hand over to Richard Kay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm afraid you've got me for the next 3 items, but hopefully all of them are fairly straightforward, and hopefully won't take too much of your time and your very packed agenda.
If I can just stop you there, I should have mentioned this is the first one of the page changes. The agenda item starts on 84 on the pack and not 93 as per the published agenda. Back over to you, Richard. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. First of all, just to say that Charlotte Sage was meant to be here to present it tonight to you. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it, so I'm covering for her. For those not familiar, Charlotte is a development management officer, but she's been doing a couple of days a week for me as a short-term secondment in the policy team, just so she gets to understand how the policy world works. And she helpfully put all this together for me. So thank you very much to Charlotte. And again, she apologised for not being able to present it herself. But just very briefly, what in terms of the item, hopefully the covering report is fairly self-explanatory, but we're now at that final stage in the process of this document. And if you approve it today, then our planning officers can then start to use the document in their negotiations with developers and hopefully push any of those reluctant developers that little bit harder to make sure that they do their bit for hedgehogs and hopefully get greater hedgehog recovery in our area. There wasn't a huge mailbag when we went out for the statutory consultation over the summer. Generally, it was supportive. You've got a full document there in your appendix of who said what and what our response is. However, it is worth mentioning there was perhaps a lot more chatter on the social media, both within the district and well beyond the district, actually. And broadly speaking, almost all of that was very supportive, which is very encouraging. So I think overall, I took from that both the statutory consultations we got back, plus that informal responses that I was monitoring on social media, and I think there was broadly very strong support for what we're doing. I'm sure many of us in this room and one or two of the comments we received, both formally and informally, said that, you know, it's a shame we can't push this a little bit further. Can you not push it a little bit further? But I think we have to be realistic that this is just a supplementary planning document. So we have to be careful we don't push it too far, because the law and national policy doesn't allow us to push it any further than I believe we've taken it in this case. So I think it's a really good step in the right direction. It will be really helpful. And if there are any reluctant developers out there, we can use this tool to persuade them that they need to do their bit for hedgehog recovery in our area. So the recommendation is for you to approve it, hopefully. And then, as I say, our planners can start to use it in the planning decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for the work you and Charlotte have done on this. Very, very much appreciated. Members, any comments? Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, I'd like to propose that we adopt this SPD, and just to thank Richard and his team very much for taking it on and doing it. I followed some of the online chatter about it. It was really interesting, and it's great to see the comments that actually came back from all sorts of organisations, but incredibly supportive in the main about what we're doing. And really, you know, I think the effect on developers is, as you've said in the report, is absolutely minimal, but the opportunity to make a real difference for wildlife, for hedgehogs in particular, is really quite considerable. And I think it would be great when things are coming through the planning process and whether they hit planning committee, to actually hear people talking about it and, you know, raising it and showing how they're addressing what we're asking them to do in these supplementary planning documents, so that we can, you know, see it really happening. It's really good. And it will be good to do whatever we can to try and keep tabs on the hedgehog numbers over a long period of time as well. So thank you ever so much for doing it. I think it's a fantastic piece of work, and I'm delighted to propose it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. I might as well go to this. Have we got a seconder for?
Yeah, he's a second chair, and has rescued a couple of hedgehogs from my own garden this week.
Members, any other comments? Councillor Dupre.
Thank you, Chair. I recognise that this is a planning document, not an environment management document. But given that page 93 refers to the widespread use of pesticides as being one of the main likely reasons for rural hedgehog decline, how has the development of this policy changed this authority's practice in the widespread use of pesticides, or any use of pesticides indeed? I appreciate that that's not a planning question, and if it's helpful, I'm happy to take a reply by email after the meeting, but if it can be answered now, then I'm fine as well.
Do you wish to comment on that?
If I may, it does relate to, we're literally in the process of setting up a workshop for our entire Parks and Open Space team on hedgehogs by hedgehog specialists. So they're coming in, I think it's November it's set up, but don't quote me on that one. And so they're getting a full talk about what to do about hedgehogs, what to look out for, what not to use, what to use, etc. So I'm sure that will be covered in that presentation to our Parks and Open Space team, if they're not already aware of some of that.
And will we have access to the outcomes of that as members?
I'm happy to relay that. Yeah, it's not a problem.
Yeah, if we could, I think that would be useful for the committee. Members, any other comments? Oh, Councillor Goldsack.
It's a very small one, and but I just know it was good to see the number of responses that you had, and I agree also there was more online. I don't know quite how to phrase the question, but there's not a single change to the SPD as a result of them, and I'm just wondering whether that's because the SPD was so good in the first place, or you know, a lot of the comments have been noted, and I think that is well and good, but you know, we want the public to take part in consultations, and I just think sometimes seeing no change to what we said already may be construed as slightly negative. So I just wondered for your opinion on that, Richard.
Yeah, it's definitely not negative. I think most of the responses were quite high level and generically supporting it, in which case, you know, agree. No point fixing something that's not broken. Where other people were making suggested changes, that's where we've got to make a judgment. Are they trying to push it too far that realistically we can't do so in a document such as this? So they were all very carefully read, but you know, we've made a response to each of them where it's felt necessary, we put in some commentary. So yeah, rest assured, all of the consultation responses were definitely read and thoroughly looked at and thought about, but we came to the conclusion that in the end, no, actually, as it is satisfactory and appropriate for what we need and what we're able to do.
Thank you for that, and I would concur. When you read through them, the majority are stating their support to it and then adding a little bit of flavour to it. But yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsack. Councillor Richard. Any other members, any other comments? I'm seeing none, in which case I'll move to the recommendation that we're requested to adopt the Hedgehog Recovery Design Guidance Supplementary Planning Document. Can I take that as unanimous? I'm not getting any dissent at all, so thank you, members, for that. Item 10 is the environment policy, and again, it's over to Richard.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Get my papers in the right order. So again, hopefully it's a fairly self-explanatory report, this one, but very briefly, what's presented to you is an update of our environment policy. We first established such a policy in March 2022, and I think it's timely we review it and refresh it if necessary every couple of years or so. So that's why it's in front of you today. I think it should be read as a sort of high-level position statement, if you like, of, you know, reconfirms our recognition of the climate emergency and the biodiversity crisis that we face. And it sets out some basic high-level position statements, if you like, and commitments as a council of what we're going to do, how we're going to do our bit to tackle those two different but clearly interlinked issues that we face. So I think it should be read as I say, as a way of expressing to the reader, you know, how are we going to operate as a council? It shouldn't be read necessarily as a set of targets and actions, etc. All of those targets, actions are set out in the separate strategy and annual action plans that this committee approved in June and will continue to come to you in June each year. At paragraph 4.1 of the covering agenda report, I set out there's 5 bullet points there where I highlight the changes that I'm recommending are made compared with the March 2022 version. Again, I don't think it's not radically different policy intention, but it's just firming up one or two things and adding a few extra bits that perhaps weren't covered in our original March version. So that's just a very brief introduction to it, Chair, and of course, happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Richard. I should have mentioned that watching online is from a page 111, not what's quoted on the published agenda. Hopefully all members have got to the right place. Are there any comments on this, members? Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. More a presentational comment than a content comment. This is one of a suite of documents, which are referred to, it would be really helpful to have an overarching diagram of the documents, which ones feed into which, including the dates when they are next due to be refreshed, how frequently they are refreshed, and similarly. I think the comments on the documents that flow from this will be more appropriate at the time that they come to us.
Thank you for that, Councillor Dupre. That sounds sensible. I'm seeing no other hands, in which case we've got a recommendation. I'm happy to propose this from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor
Happy to second, Chair.
Bovingdon. So the recommendation is we requested to approve the updated environment policy as attached to Appendix 1. Again, I'm sensing there's no dissension on this. Do I have unanimous vote on that? Thank you, members. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. And then next item is item 11, and I'll get this bit right now. That item 11 is from page 117 on the pack, not 125 as per the agenda. So again over to Richard.
Thank you. So just a few days ago, we received confirmation from the Combined Authority of a new funding package that's been made available to us, together with some draft terms and conditions for how that money needs to be spent. So in short, we've been allocated, and other districts across Cambridgeshire have been allocated separate money. We've been allocated close to £167,000 of capital money to be spent on, in simple terms, carbon emission saving projects in public buildings or other community facilities in our villages across the district. Just to add, that's not our own buildings, it's not ECDC assets, but other community assets such as village halls or the like. What I'm recommending is that not only we accept the money in principle and sign that funding agreement with the Combined Authority so that we receive that funds, but then how we distribute that funding, I've set out in Appendix 1. And how I've broadly structured that is to the Pride of Place grant funding system that's been operating the last 12 months or so. That Pride of Place was obviously for nature-based projects, but it worked really well. Communities have got involved in it, and therefore I've replicated the basic principles around that. What it does is it picks up all of the mandatory terms and conditions that the Combined Authority have set us, but it's also picked up a little bit more explanation and flavour for what we might want and what we might seek, and how we will appraise the bids. Typically, what I'm expecting, albeit the terms and conditions set out lots of examples, but typically what I'm probably expecting is the money to be used for use on village halls, for example, whether it's solar panels, batteries to go with that, air source heat pumps, insulation, those sort of things are what I'm expecting. But let's see what other innovative projects our communities can come up with. It is relatively short term in terms of the time frame for spend. So there's only once the bids close, there's going only an absolute maximum of a year or so. So it does limit it to some projects, particularly being capital funding. You know, bigger capital funding projects might need planning permission or procurement, etc., and that can often take longer than 12 months. So it's not going to be the very large scale projects I'm not expecting, but as I say, those that can be relatively quickly delivered, such as solar panels or SOC pumps or insulation, is likely to come forward. So I've recommended the terms and conditions to you. We may, before we launch it, just refresh ourselves, because I say this has been done fairly quickly, put together so we can get to this committee and get it approval. So there is a recommendation on there that also includes, if we do tweak it a little bit before we actually launch it in hopefully October, delegation to the chair just to sign off any of those tweaks that we may want to make before we launch it, which hopefully you're comfortable with. But other than that, I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for that. And I know, before I bring members in, I know the Pride of Place, I know it's on a smaller scale, but that worked well. A number of my villages bid into it and have done things to make their villages look better. Members, any comments on this? No? Councillor Dupre.
Yes, a question halfway down page 124. applications received in the first phase will be considered and funds set aside for successful projects. Thereafter, applications received in January will be considered in February. Considered by whom? Is this entirely delegated to officers to distribute? Is it on a it's presumably not on a first come, first served basis if you're setting a closure date, two closure dates, in fact, for it. How does the mechanism of this actually work? And does this committee or anyone else get to see the outcome of the distribution of these funds?
The intention, Chair, is to replicate the Pride of Place grant scheme, which is delegated to officers to approve or otherwise on a phased basis. So it's virtually identical to that. So essentially what it's saying is there's a sort of 2 or 3 month period where everybody can apply at the same rate. It won't be on a literally a first come first served basis within that period. All of those will be treated equally, assessed in January. If we receive lots of good projects there, then clearly we'll have to rank them in some way or other. But if there's then money left over, that goes into the second round and the third round until the money's spent. The reason why I've done that, well, partly because it was very successful with the Pride of Place, is partly because the timing is very tight with this. That if we don't release the money quickly, the nature of these being capital projects, you've got to procure. Some of them might need planning permission or other approvals that, you know, the longer you leave it and the more process you put in it, you risk actually delivering nothing because the time just runs out. So that's why I've done it on that basis, on that what I think is a pragmatic basis, just to get the good projects in the door as quick as possible and fund them as quick as possible. That's the basis of my thinking anyway.
Thank you for that, Richard. I've got Councillor Bovingdon and then Councillor Trapp.
Thanks, Chair. Lovely to get some money from the CPCA finally. Shame it wasn't a lot more, because I do remember, I think, the previous mayor trying to come up with £1 million for the market town. So it seems to be a watered down version of this, but it is a very good scheme. And I think £167,000 is going to get used up very, very quickly. The Pride of Places, I think, showed that, and other various grant schemes. We've had the high street grants were taken up very quickly. So I think this is going to go very quickly. On that basis, I'm happy to propose, Chair, subject to the other.
Thank you, Councillor Bovingdon. I'll go to Councillor Trapp, then I'll deal with the secondary in a minute. Yeah.
In terms of the distribution of the grants throughout the district, would there be a possibility of it making sure it's sort of level throughout the district and not concentrated on particularly those grants that had failed the previous ones?
Chair, my personal view would be I'd rather award the money where it has the best emission savings rather than necessarily thinking on a pure geographic basis. The way the Pride of Place scheme worked and our other schemes that we've done, the Orchard Tree giveaway and the Oak Tree giveaway, they've naturally fallen across the entire district. So we're promoting it across all districts. I've already flagged it up to parish councils that this might be on its way, subject to approval tonight. So they're all aware of it, hopefully, and hopefully scratching their heads and thinking, can we make use of it? So I'd rather not put in a criteria personally, which says, 25% for the south and 25% for the. I think that might just get a bit complicated, and you might end up awarding funding to projects which are not the best, but to fit a geographical spread. So I'd rather not, personally. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Bailey next.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say a massive thank you to Richard for turning this around so quickly. It's been something of a frustration at the Combined Authority, because I remember first discussing this idea in December 2021, believe it or not. It was, as Councillor Bovingdon has alluded to, it was a sort of on-runner to the previous mayor's £1 million for each market town proposal, and the current mayor wanted to support rural villages, particularly those facing rural deprivation was a particular slant. And we discussed it in December 2021. It got agreed in the budget in the January 2022, and unfortunately CPCA has failed to spend any of that money to date for various complicated reasons. So it's good to see it being passported out to the districts. There were a few raised eyebrows at the Combined Authority board meeting where given that this is about trying to help rural deprivation, I recall that South Cambridgeshire District Council was being awarded over £400,000, whilst Fenland District Council was something like 90-something thousand pounds. And we were somewhere in the middle at 167. So that was rather surprising, given that there was supposed to be a slant towards rural deprivation. But there we are. I'm pleased that we've got it, because I believe we can get this money out the door. I mean, net zero projects are more complex, more, less likely probably that our parishes have necessarily got stuff immediately lined up. But I know Richard and others in the council will do what they can to help support, if they're needing information and help and advice around some of that as well. So, because we want to get this money spent, it wants to be out there, and we don't want to have to be giving it back to the combined authority and failing to get it spent as well. But it is somewhat frustrating that it now has such a sort of short shelf life, and we've got to do it in such an urgent rush, really, because if when you do things in a rush, it doesn't necessarily get done as well as it might have done had we been able to give our communities more of a heads up on it, really. But thank you for turning it around so quickly, and I'm delighted to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. I had Councillor Bovingdon proposed it. Do I have a seconder?
Chair, I'd like to second this
Okay,
proposal.
thank you, Councillor Goodall. Are there any other comments, questions members have got? I'm seeing no hands, in which case we go to the recommendation that members are requested to accept the Net Zero Villages grant of 167,737 from the CPCA, approve the East Cambridgeshire Specific Onward Community Grant Scheme criteria as detailed in Appendix 1, and 2.3 is delegate authority to the Strategic Planning Manager in consultation with the Chair of Finance and Assets to finalise the detailed arrangements and opening of the grant scheme, likely in October 2024, following the signing of the CPCA grant funding agreement. Again, I'm seeing no dissent. Do we have unanimity on that? Good, thank you, members. Thank you for that. And thank you, Richard, for the last three items and all the work you've done on these. Thank you. Item 12 is the assets update. And again, those people watching online or members in the room can find that on page 127. And I hand over to Spencer Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just give a few key updates because the report's quite detailed and the agenda's quite long, so I'll keep it quite short. So I'll start with the play audit. Obviously, the play audit was offered out to join us as a play audit for accessible play throughout the district. To date, we've had 15 parishes apply to us to join us in the audit, which is a good turnout. We've still got time, and I get them in every day at the moment as well. So we've still got to the 11th of October as a sort of a guideline for a closing date. So I think that's quite promising so far. I'll move on to the depot improvements because it's obviously still an ongoing quite a big project. We're now moving to the outside. Now the office accommodation is much improved. So we're looking at the traffic management and that around the site. And the first part we've actually already installed, and you're pleased to hear with the HVO tank has now been installed at the depot. So that's the greener fuel for running some of the dust carts on. So that's really good news. Good news for the staff over on the annex is that the lift tender process is still going on, but we are moving on quite nicely. We've done all the scoring. It's now going through the validation process. So hopefully we'll be able to award that very soon. And finally, Newton Street car park. Obviously, the timing of that is hopefully going to work before the Christmas busy period, and also with the building works on the Paradise site coming to a close, that we can tidy up the whole area. That basically concludes my little update, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Spencer, for that. Members, any questions, comments? I'm seeing nothing, in which case you've got away lightly on that, but thank you. Thank you very much for your report, Spencer. And that this obviously was just for noting. But I think you're here for the second one, which is item 13, the Health and Safety Annual Report. And again, for those online, that is on page 131. Spencer, back to you.
Thank you again, Chair. So this year's annual report was put together by David Vincent, who was our health and safety advisor. He has since retired, but members will be pleased to know that we have got Donald now in place, who's supporting me in this role. And so that's really positive. Just thank David for his hard work over the years, for his knowledge and support to the council, really. That was 8 years he was here with us. He was only supposed to join us for a year to start with. So anyway, back to the report. Again, it's quite detailed, so I won't go into it in much detail myself, but I think I'd just like to draw your attention to the benchmarking on page, it's 139 I've got here. Hopefully that's correct. And really it's just to say that I think our figures with benchmarks against Fenland and Hunts, which are our two best people to benchmark against, you know, although no accident is great, it just kind of does show that we are in the areas where we probably should be. I think it's fair to say that numbers have increased, but as much as that is, David and I and Donald going forward have been pushing a lot more for near miss and accident reporting to be declared. I think in the past, like, shouldn't we? And it's looked like when there's no doubt, fill it in, because it's the unknown, and trying to capture these things and then pass it on through the health and safety working group that we can eliminate accidents going forward, which is the most important thing. So that's really my update, Chair, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Spencer. Thank you for that. Members, any comments, any questions? Councillor Alison Whelan.
Just a quick one on here, obviously capturing actual incidents that are happening. Are you also asking people to report near misses? So because obviously a near miss could be an accident next time.
Absolutely, and that's where we've been trying to promote it and advise that they're just as, if not important, as the actual accidents to catch the nearest. We may look at whether the form's clear enough that we ask people to fill in, because a lot of people say, what is a near miss? So we've still got some education to do there, but we'll get in there.
Thank you. It's just, obviously that's one way of just trying to improve things a little bit, and it's always good to have none.
Thank you for that. Any members, any other comments, questions? I'm seeing nothing, in which case this is just for noting anyway, but so thank you, Spencer, for the report. And we move on to item 14, which is the economic development funding update, and we've got Kieran Carr, who's the economic development manager. And again, for those members in the room and watching online, this is on page 145 of the pack. Kieran, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The paper outlines the detail of the recommendation, but I thought it would be useful just to go through the context again around why the paper is being presented. The summary is around two sources of funding: the Littleport Market Town Fund, which is for 925,000, and the Rural England Prosperity Fund, which is for £550,000. The original proposal that had been agreed by committee was that this funding would be brought together to deliver an extension to the East Base business unit with a total budget of 1.4 million. We've been working with a contractor on a design and deliver basis for quite a few months now in terms of trying to deliver that project. And we've actually reached a point after a number of iterations where we haven't been able to get an extension design within the 1.4 million. The latest cost that we received was in the region of 2.5 million. We have been in conversation regularly with the combined authority around the risk of the project and what we've been trying to do. And a decision has been made that we're not going to be able to deliver an East Base extension with the amount of funding that we've got available. And this has just been constantly overtaken by ever increasing construction costs as well. We actually moved from an original concept, which would be an old brick building, which has now moved to a modular building, and even that is coming in at over 1.4 million over budget. So in conversation with the combined authority, what the recommendation is proposing is that we use the £550,000 Rural Prosperity Fund to fund a further grant scheme. And this is on the basis of how successful the previous grant scheme that we just recently completed has been. And we feel that we are under time pressure to spend that money by the 31st of March. And we feel that with a further grant scheme, we will be able to do that and deliver a high level of outcomes in terms of job creation and support to businesses that we achieved with the previous grant scheme. In terms of the Littleport Market Town funding, we had been in discussion with Littleport Parish Council around the potential of repurposing that money. We were made aware that a business community building had been proposed or was proposed in Littleport that was in receipt of Section 106 funding. And again, that was short of budget. So we had a conversation with the combined authority about using the Market Town funding to support that. We've now had the full costings in for that. And again, with pressure from construction costs, we're a further 1.5 million short of funding with that. So we're continuing to talk to the combined authority and Littleport around what we can do with this funding. At present, those conversations are still ongoing. I've got a call next week with the combined authority to talk about some other project ideas. In terms of the Rural Prosperity funding, that will be subject to approval from the combined authority as well. And we have got a project change request submission prepared, subject to approval from committee that we move forward with the grant. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Kieran. Members, any questions, any comments? Councillor Trapp.
Yes, I mean, how successful is eSpace North at Littleport? I mean, are we talking about it bursting at the seams?
It is very successful. At the moment, it's operating at around about 95% occupancy rate. And there's usually a small drop off simply because of churn as businesses move out, and then we move new tenants in. So it is very successful. We did feel that the addition of the extension would have been a good choice for the project, obviously, and it was supported by the FNA committee as well.
It's surprising that modular building can't be tacked onto it, given like Stansted Airport, which was designed to be modular from the beginning.
I was surprised as well. There's a lot of pressures on modular build for the reasons that we talked about, and we'd actually moved from buying new bespoke modular buildings very quickly to buying used modular buildings, and the demand for these buildings is very high at the moment, and the prices on these are so volatile. The other aspects as well, which we were struggling with, was meeting some of the requirements around parking and biodiversity net gain as well within the size of the extension we were looking to put up. And it had reached the point we could have put a very small extension onto the side of eSpace within the 1.4 million budget, but it wouldn't have delivered very much at all, really.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Kane.
Does the council not have any other funding it could use to fill the gap? Because eSpace North, my understanding is it is very successful, and we want to encourage startups and businesses to grow and develop. So is there not any other money, SIL money or anything that could be used to fill the gap?
So obviously now this project, the replacement project's now not going ahead. That's something we can look at because we now need to find a new project for the £925,000. So if the committee are happy, we can investigate that as a potential alternative project going forwards.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions, comments? We've got a recommendation. I'm happy to propose that from the chair. Do I have a second?
I'm happy to second on that one,
Thank you,
Chair.
Councillor Kane.
Sorry, Chair, 2.1, does that still stand?
No, we would now need to come back in November with an alternative project. So 2.1 now falls away. We didn't find out from Newport Town Council till after the report was published.
So I'm happy to propose an amendment that so we ignore 2.1 and just bring 2.2 and 2.3. If members are happy with that. Which is 2.2, approve the reallocation of 550,000 rural development funding for England to deliver a capital grant scheme, and then delegate to 2.3, delegate authority to the economic development manager in consultation with the chair of finance and assets to finalise the detailed arrangements and opening of the grant scheme, following again the approval of the funding from the combined authority. So are members happy with that? Yeah. And we will obviously get a report back at the November meeting in respect to 2.1. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Kieran. Thank you. Item 15 is the gender pay, and again, that is on page 153. Nicole Pemmer, the HR manager, will introduce it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. This report provides the committee with measurable data on gender pay at the council. As at the 31st of March, the women's mean hourly rate was £18.57 per hour, 9% lower than the male mean hourly rate of £20.40 per hour. And the women's median hourly rate was £16.63 per hour, which was 10.3% lower than the male median hourly rate of £18.53 per hour. Table 1 sets out the percentage of men and women in each of the pay quartiles. Females account for 55% in the upper, 77% in the upper middle, 72% in the lower middle, and 77% in the lower quartiles. At this time, the workforce comprised of 132 females and 56 males. Section 4.5 sets out how the council's pay gap has changed over the last 3 years, and tables 2, 3, and 4 provide a comparison against other local authorities. The council will continue to build on actions aimed at reducing the gender pay gap as set out in 4.7. Members are asked to note the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Nicole. Members, any comments, any questions? Councillor Kane.
4.6 on page 154, the third bullet point. It says the council has effective promotion practices in place as evidenced by the high number of females in the upper quartiles. But there's 55% of females in the upper quartile, but the council employees, 70% are female. So I'm not actually sure that 55% is high. It's below the proportion of females that the council employs.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I understand what your point. Did you want to comment on that, Nicole, or? Sorry, microphone. Yeah, sorry.
I don't think I'm sure I have a response to it. No, I don't have a comment for that.
Haven't got an answer. It may be something you want to take away and get and do a briefing note to the committee. Councillor Trapp.
Yes, I'm just wondering, table 1. I'm not sure whether it'd be useful or not to have it as a pay gap between each of the quartiles. What it is within each of those. So it's a horizontal thing that one says that's the pay gap between those within those quartiles. I don't know if will be valuable. I think it might be valuable, but you might have different views.
Sorry, what were you proposing?
So table 1.
Yeah.
To look at the difference in pay between within each quartile.
Okay.
I mean, you can't do it now, but obviously,
No, okay.
but I'm just wondering whether that might be of significant, useful, whether that be useful.
Yes, that's something I can provide.
Thank you very much.
I'll bring councillor. I'm conscious. I understand councillor Trapp's point. Hopefully, it's not going to cause too much extra work. That's what I'm looking at. But I'll bring councillor Bailey in.
Thank you. On table, 4.8, so looking at table 2, for example, sorry if I'm being a bit slow, but can you just confirm what the minus figures mean? Because does that mean that females are earning more than the males? So, for example, you've got South Cambridgeshire District Council, difference in hourly rate, the mean is minus 9.5 and the median is minus 19.5.
Yes, sorry. So this is because we obviously our percentages are because we have it's where women are earning 91p for every pound. And in those instances, it's where you've got a higher proportion of females. So yeah, that's where it's a minus.
Okay, thank you for that, Nicole. Members, any other comments? I'm seeing no more hands, in which case that is just for noting. So thank you, Nicole. And then we're on to item 16, which is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Policy 2025 to 2028. And that starts at page 159, and it's back over to Nicole again.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, the Equality Act legally protects people from discrimination in the workplace and in wider society. It introduced 9 protected characteristics, making it unlawful to discriminate against someone on the grounds of age, disability, race, sex, sexual orientation, gender reassignment, pregnancy, maternity, religion or belief, and marriage and civil partnership. The Equality Act is underpinned by the public sector equality duty to make sure that public authorities and organisations carrying out public functions think about how they can improve society and promote equality in every aspect of their day-to-day business. To assist in the performance of this duty, the Council introduced a 4-year Equality, Diversity and Inclusion policy. The current policy ran from 2021 to 2024 and has been updated for the period 2025 to 2028, and changes are shown in red. And members are requested to approve the first draft for consultation in accordance with 4.4 and enable a final draft to be presented to the committee in January.
Thank you, Nicole. Members, any questions, any comments? Obviously, Councillor Alison Whelan.
First of all, thank you for this, and it's good to see it set out like this. It makes it very, very easy to see the changes which are made, which appear to be very positive changes that have gone into the policy. The only question I actually have is that an awful lot of places are now moving far more towards talking about diversity, equity and inclusion rather than equality, as equality has huge downsides to it. The difference between equity and equality is enormous and actually can place people in a worse position than if you weren't attempting to bring in equality. So I'd just like to say the only thing that I think is missing from here is a little bit of description about equity and the commitment to equity. But apart from that, thank you very much for the report.
Thank you. Happy to put something about equity into the policy.
Thank you for that. And thank you for that, Councillor Alison Whelan, because I trusted that I'm a governor of one. We had a brilliant speech from somebody about 3 weeks ago about the difference between equity and equality. And it was very, informative, so it's a very valid point. Members, any other comments? We're being asked to, obviously, I'm happy to propose this from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bobbington. And we've been obviously, sorry. Councillor Bailey.
So just a question. I thought that a male and a female could now have a civil partnership, but that's not what it seems to say on page 178, marriage and civil partnership. I think males and females, they can either get married or they can have a civil partnership. And it says same-sex couples can also have their relationships legally recognised as civil partnerships. Because there was a big case, wasn't there? It was a High Court ruling. I was a big fan of it. I thought it was very good. Sorry, 178 of the little numbers.
I think I do recall that, Councillor
Yeah.
Bailey. Yeah, so if we can check. If we
It's
can,
oh yeah, sorry. It's agenda item 16, appendix 1.
yeah.
Marriage and civil partnership halfway down. And it says same-sex couples can also have their relationships legally recognised as civil partnership. But anyone can, can't they? So
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
just think it needs amending.
Okay, sort that.
Thank you.
Okay, if we can check that and adjust it before it's distributed. Thank you for that, Councillor Bailey. Obviously, members, it's going out for consultation. So obviously, if there's any more detailed comments you want to make, then please feed them into the consultation. But we're being asked to approve the first draft of the updated. I'll use what's quoted here rather than equity, equality, diversity and inclusion policy 2025 to 2028 for further consultation in accordance with 4.4 and to enable the final draft to be presented back to us. I think it's the 30th of January. We're due to meet in January to the Finance and Assets Committee. Again, I'm sensing that's unanimity across the committee. Thank you for that, members, and thank you, Nicole, for presenting that. We move on to item 17, which is the ECDC Bereavement Centre Project Q2 update. And I know this is for noting, but I know we've got an amendment. All I was going to say was, and I'm not stopping anybody wanting to, but obviously our members wanting to refer to the exempt documents during the debate, because obviously I'll try and keep as much of it as I can in the public session. Obviously, if people want to comment on it, then we will go into it. I'm not stopping people making those comments, but I'm sensing that at this stage, nobody does want to go into exempt.
Well,
Councillor Bailey.
not necessarily at this stage, but I've noted the amendments come forward, which I think is almost impossible to have a meaningful debate without going into exempt session.
Okay, well, we'll maybe have to cross that bridge when we come to it. Yeah, but we've got Isabel Edgar here who's going to introduce the paper. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you, Chair. So since Council approved the business case in February, 2 strands of work have been underway. So firstly, the governance for the setting up of the project, meetings with internal services to align input from other areas of the Council. And this has been focused on the service design part of the project. The second strand of work has been the procurement for the core design team, which has now been completed and they've been on board since June, and a number of workshops have been held that have been informing the more technical elements of the project. So just as a reminder, Council approved the business case when the project had got to a REBA stage 3. This means a design had been agreed, high-level costing input had been received, and planning consent had been received. The project team, who are all new to the project, other than the architect who we have kept on, have been working on the technical design matters for the building. So, for example, we've now had M&E, civil and structural engineering inputs, and these have informed these have been informing the project overall, and the detailed inputs from these have been informing the cost plans. We've also completed a number of new surveys, as those completed in 2020 needed updating, and others were required to inform the latest cost model. We've had some really positive meetings with the Wildlife Trust, and we're now collectively working together to ensure that the rich ecology on site is not only maintained but enhanced for public use. There is now also an overarching project timeline that's been developed. This will continue to be informed by the project team until we are in a position to lock it down following a tendering process. Just some key notes for members is that the construction must start by late October 2025. Otherwise, our planning permission will expire. And we estimate at this stage that the completion of the bereavement centre is July 2026. But this will actually be informed by the market once we've gone out to tender. The highlight report in exempt papers details the results of activity to date and provides information on an updated draft cost plan at the midpoint in July, for July of 2025. The cost plan is based on the design and technical inputs we have had this July, and it's important to note that this is still only a financial model, as the design and build has not yet been opened up to a competitive market. The implication of the draft cost plan is that it has identified a cost pressure above the amount originally approved by council, and this is broadly in the following areas. As expected, there's been an uplift due to inflationary increases. There's been a small increase in build costs following input from the technical design team and reflective of some benchmarking that we've done. We've also updated our professional fees to take the project to the final stage, Rebus 6, and we've updated our risk contingency as well. The details are obviously in exempt papers as they remain commercially sensitive ahead of going out to market for design and build. So following all these inputs and surveys that we've had done with the technical design team, a stage 3 report and a new cost plan will be released to me shortly. And this will outline in detail where the cost pressures are derived from. It will also provide a strategy for where costs could be managed, risks mitigated, and options around phasing or changing the scope of the project to bring it back in line with the approved budget. And it will also advise on the preferred route to tender to ensure that the work is packaged up in such a way to allow flexibility for the council and ensure we get a competitive cost back from the market. So finally then, the next phase of the project will be to finalise some of the surveys and then take all the technical input data that we have to date to develop a proposal that can then be put out to tender. Tenders will go live in February 2025 and they'll complete in May. This is a really important stage of the project and will provide the council with a real cost profile that has been competitively tendered and a plan to deliver the community infrastructure while managing costs and mitigating risks. It should be noted that ahead of appointing a preferred contractor, if the project scope or costs are different to that agreed by council in February of this year, then I will need further approvals to progress the project. If, however, the market responds in line with our original assumptions, then the project can continue to the build phase. And I will also then begin to focus on the new service offer for our residents. That's all I have to say at this time, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Isabel. Members, again, bear in mind, we can't veer into exempt items. Any questions before I take the amendment? Councillor Kane.
I think you said that tenders were going to complete in May 25 and the project was going to complete in July 26. I think I remember because of biodiversity and things, there's quite a long period in the year when you can't do any works. May 25, I think, falls in that period. So, and so does July 26. So the project to finish by July 26, I think, if I'm right, would effectively have to finish by the end of February 26 to avoid the time when you're not allowed to do any works, and wouldn't be able to start, I think, until October 25. So October to February, that's quite a tight time to build something of this significance.
So we do have to produce a construction ecology plan. So for the construction phase, so this will have to be signed off by planning. So that will detail how we're going to manage the construction phase through key areas of the year. And that will need to be approved, but it won't stop construction in every part of the site. So the site can continue. So the site build can continue. There will be a period which is quite tight, which will be when we're finishing our surveys, sort of at the beginning of September, and where we will need to start on site between September and the completion, the expiry of our planning. So that is a tight period, and we've been working with both the Wildlife Trust, our ecologist and planning to agree how that could potentially go forward.
Thank you for that, Isabel. Members, any other comments or questions at this stage? In which case, there's no comments, so I need to go to the amendment then, which has been proposed by Councillor Dupre. Do you want to introduce that? And obviously, bearing in mind, you can't go into anything that's on the exempt papers. Thank you, Councillor Dupre.
Thank you very much. I don't believe there's any need to stray into the exempt papers, and I don't intend to do so. The public papers tell us at 4.4, and this is in the public domain, that the implication of the new draft cost plan is that there is a predicted overall increase in costs, largely made up of a gap in the project's contingency budget and an increase in build costs. And there are further details in the exempt appendix, which of course I will not go into. The officer's presentation described some of the drivers behind those increases in costs, although obviously, again, without straying into the exempt information. What we are therefore faced with is that we are being asked to note, simply to note, an update on a project where there are increases in costs, which are potentially quite significant for the project. And it is my belief that it's not appropriate simply to sit here and note while further work is being undertaken and presumably further costs being incurred without this coming back to full council for consideration in view of the new information that we now have. That's why, therefore, we've put together a recommendation, an additional recommendation that says that in view of the size of that gap, which I'm not going to disclose because I'm not permitted to, in the budget and the costs, which is reported in the public domain, although not quantified, which have substantial implications for the project, that we should refer this item to the full council meeting on the 17th of October 2024, so that the full council can discuss in exempt session, if there's no other way to do it, the additional expenditure, the additional costs that have been identified, and what the council's view is of this project, given that information. So I'd like to propose that additional recommendation that we refer this for the consideration of the council at its meeting next month because of the information we have been provided in the exempt papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dupre. And Councillor Alison Whelan, your second. Do you reserve your right to speak? Yeah, okay, thank you. Members, any comments? I've got Councillor Miller. Did you raise your hand, Councillor Kane? Sorry. No. No, sorry, I wasn't sure if I caught out the corner of my eye. So I'll go to Councillor Miller first. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. My understanding is that the information we've been given in the exempt papers and all of the cost estimates, all of the costings that we have to date are internal estimates of the whole project, and that the new data represent nothing more than a refinement of earlier figures. And we won't know for sure what the thing will really cost until it goes out to tender. I believe that's the way it works. That being the case, would it not be more appropriate, more suitable for Councillor Kane's, excuse me, Dupre's proposal to be brought once we do know what the full costs are after the proposal has gone out to tender?
Thank you for that comment. Councillor Bailey and then Councillor Goodall.
Yeah,
Trying to make
thank
sure I
you.
don't miss anybody.
Thank you. Without going into exempt session, it's impossible to discuss the detail and the risk information that we've been provided with. And, you know, I absolutely support what Councillor Miller has said. You know, we don't know what the costs are until we test the market. My understanding is that it is a competitive market. And that is what we need to do. That is what full council agreed to do. And if when the tender responses come back, there is a change in cost, either, well, if it's down, it's not a problem. More likely it's up. Infrastructure costs are increasing. You know, I've noted infrastructure projects in councils not very far away, which go up overnight all the time. Never seem to come in on budget. The highways projects at County Council being notorious for it, you know, costs are increasing, bill costs are increasing. So it's not a massive surprise. Obviously, we want to get good value for money. That's what matters here. And we need to make sure that it's affordable for the council and that it doesn't wreck what was a very positive revenue model. Those are the important factors, and we can't make any decisions on any of that until we know what the cost is. So we have to go out to tender to get an understanding of the actual cost of this project. So that is what council's agreed to do. There's no change to that. And that is what we need to carry on and get on with doing. So I won't be supporting this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. I've got Councillor Goodall and then Councillor Trapp.
Thank you, Chair. All I was going to add to what Councillor Bailey and Councillor Miller have already said is that also the officer, Isabel, also mentioned that they're doing amendments to the plans to see if they can bring it back into cost as well. So if them amendments bring it back to close to the original budget, which I can't mention, then this amendment is then null and void anyway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Goodall. Councillor Trapp.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure about this. I mean, the original design or the design that we've got and the scope of it seems will produce a wonderful building. We know that, and a wonderful location. However, I'm looking at 4.5 with A, B, C, D, E, all those things, ones, except for C, actually. That is going to reduce, it will bring it, might bring it under budget, but it will reduce what we actually intended to have, a wonderful building, which was going to have, which a unique selling point. Sorry, that's unique selling point is market speak, isn't it? So it will have. The thing was that it was meant to be having a brilliant thing, which will get people to actually go there. And I think phasing the project, I think, would be disastrous. I mean, you're going to have to be working on, doing the creme will be doing its stuff, or crematorium will be doing its stuff while the next phase comes in. Reducing the scope of the project, I think, will be sad because of the whole idea, the whole concept was one big project, all in its entirety. Value engineering means cheaper, I think. And of course, identifying additional council and funding sources is also, we just had the thing about increasing e-space, based on SIL money, we might have more. We might reduce other facilities in the district because of that. So I feel that we've identified that there might be actually problems with funding, and I think any of those A, B, and D would be actually quite disastrous. So I would think about looking at the project again.
Thank you, councillor Trapp. I've got councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to agree with councillor Bailey that it's really important that we achieve value for money for this council. We're spending a lot of money on professional advisors for this scheme, who we think are competent and experienced, and they have given us advice that the costs are going to increase. I'm also going to agree with councillor Bailey that build costs seem to be increasing daily. So we can be fairly certain that that advice on the increased costs is indeed correct and may yet get worse, especially as we've heard that we're asking the contractor to work within a very tight timescale, which in my experience always leads to a premium on the price. And we are paying these people day by day as they develop this project. So it seems to me that now is exactly the time to go back to full council and say, these are the issues that you need to be aware of. Do you think it's value for money for the district council to keep pursuing this project in the light of the warning of the overspend or the need to significantly change the project, as we see in 4.5? So yes, you're right, those changes may bring it back in line with budget, but then they're not producing the project that full council approved. It wanted a state-of-the-art facility for our residents. And if we have to reduce the scope, have additional grant, phasing it, for heaven's sake, phasing nearly always adds to the costs. And I can't imagine wanting a peaceful experience of burying or visiting the grave of a relative and having building works going on around me. So the options in 4.5 could bring it back to budget, but would fundamentally change the nature of the project. And 4.4 is telling us that it isn't going to come in on budget. So I really think we need to let full council see the whole project, the whole idea, and decide whether at this stage it wants to continue spending local ratepayers' money on a project which is very different from the one that full council approved. And I would like a recorded vote on this amendment, please.
Thank you, councillor Kane. That's noted on the recorded vote. Councillor Goldsack.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. It's an interesting debate trying to keep out of the information that we can't use, and it's always difficult. I want to come up a couple of levels. There's only three elements on any project, regardless of its size. There's the time involved, there's the costs involved, there's the quality of the outcome. They're the only three: time, cost, quality. We've heard from Isabel, the officer tonight, that the time constraints that we're working to. We are looking at the cost elements, but we don't know what they are. The quality elements are being reviewed to see whether we can make any suitable changes. That to me is good project practice. Absolutely good sound project practice. You look at all three elements, but they are interchangeable. If you push in and reduce the quality, it will affect cost, maybe on time. If you lengthen the time, it changes costs, it changes quality, etc. They're all interchangeable. So from my point of view on this one, and you know, there's a lot of good stuff been spoken in this debate, but from my point of view on this, I'm quite a practical guy. Tell me how much it's going to cost from a builder who's contractually committed to build this. Then we've got rounds to actually have full council buying an argument to it. I agree with what Councillor Kane just said. Then when we've got that information, bring it to full council and let full council see exactly what it's committed to. Unfortunately, although budgeted, some of those costs will have to be incurred before we know that figure. But they were in the budget, they haven't actually changed. So I think I largely agree with what Councillor Miller said at the beginning of this debate, which is we need to go to tender, we need to get those figures back, then bring the whole paper back to full council to review. We may not. We may be surprised, and I think we all would be surprised if this came back at on or below budget. But at that point, bring it back to full council and let's have a look and see where we are. But the commitment to such a big project, we're going to get bumps on the journey, and let's not lose sight of the fact here that the costs involved are unknown. So the sooner we can move to a point of known, the sooner we've got some reality to deal with.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsack. I'm seeing no more hands, in which case I'll go to Councillor Alison Whelan as the seconder of the motion.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting. I work in the construction industry, and where I work is within finance in that construction industry. I see what's going on a daily basis, and I see the problems that we've got, and I see the contraction of the industry, which is coming, significantly because of the change in cost profiles of a lot of projects. We're seeing more and more major developers are failing. We have to be aware of all of that. What it fundamentally comes down to is that costs within the construction industry are going to be significantly higher, and they are continuously rising. The rates of increase are still in double figures in the construction industry, and there is no sign of that changing at this time. What we've attempted to do here is actually to say this isn't really the right place for this to be considered, and it isn't about whether, for me, it's not about whether or not we should pull the plug on this project. It's far more about we need to make sure that every single member of the council is fully informed and actually fully able to have that debate in confidential session about where the project actually is. That to me is what we're proposing here. To not send this to full council for that debate to be had at that level would be remarkably surprising, and would suggest that we simply don't want everybody to be involved in that discussion. So please, we're very aware of what it says in the report here, in the public papers, but please, can we have this discussion at full council with all members able to have their say?
Thank you, Councillor Alison Whelan. Councillor Dupre, as the proposer of the motion, do you wish to make any further comment? Because technically it's not an amendment, because I don't think, can I have some guidance on that? I think it's a motion. Yeah, so, yeah. I'll give you a chance to sum up.
Yes, I think it is a procedural motion, as I believe I mentioned when it was submitted.
Because the recommendation is for noting, which we wouldn't normally need a proposer and seconder for, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's, I think we've had a useful debate. I think it's been a respectful debate, which is important. I think that the points remain that the significance of this is such that we don't believe that that can be put off into the long distance at a time when the costs will continue to rise as they do. The water's rising out there, and so are the costs of everything. And also, given the other issues raised particularly by Councillor Kane about the other constraints such as time, and if we then find that we're having a debate later on about some very fundamental things, that's also going to affect the timeline. It is our view that these things have to be considered and discussed early on while we are still capable of influencing the shape of what happens over the coming months. Simply to note is not enough, and I believe it would be a failure of our duty as councillors responsible for large amounts of public money and large amounts of money to be spent on this, if we did not take this opportunity to consider, reflect, and come to a conclusion at a meeting next month.
Thank you, councillor Dupre. We now go to I'll read the recommendation out, especially for those members of the public who are watching online, because they won't have seen this from the paper. And we're going to a recorded vote. But the recommendation is on 2.2 that in view of the size of the gap in the project's contingency budget and increase in build costs reported in 4.4 of the report, which have substantial implications for the project, members are requested to refer this item to the meeting of the full council on the 17th of October 2024. That is what we're voting on. So if you could take the roll, please, Jane, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm now going to read your name out in turn. If you could let me know whether you're going to vote for, against or abstain. Councillor Bailey.
Against.
Councillor Bovingdon. Councillor Kane.
For.
Councillor Dupre.
For.
Councillor Goldsack.
Against.
Councillor Goodall.
Against.
Councillor Miller.
Against.
Councillor Sharp.
Against.
Councillor Trapp.
For.
Councillor Alison Whelan.
For.
Councillor Christine Whelan.
For.
Got everybody, haven't I? The amendment falls with 5 votes. That's right, isn't it? 6 votes against and 5 votes for.
Okay, thank you, Jane. So the motion has fallen. We've done what the recommendation on 2.1 says. We've noted the information provided. So thank you, Isabel, for your attendance. We move on to item 18, which is the appointment of a substitute representative on the Rural Services Network. And I'd like to propose from the chair, Councillor Julia Huffer. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bailey. Do I have any other nominations? I'm seeing no it's Councillor Kane.
Sorry, could I just ask a question? Why do we need a substitute representative? What's happened to the previous one?
Let me take it.
Yeah.
The previous one was Councillor Lay, and he's now no longer a member of the Conservatives. So there's now a space as a substitute on the Rural Network Services.
So does the substitute on the Rural Network have to be a member of the Conservative group? So I don't.
He left the position.
He
Sorry,
resigned, did he?
He resigned from the position. He didn't want it anymore.
Right,
Yeah,
so-
he
so
resigned
he-
from-
saying
He wrote and resigned
Yes.
from that position.
it
Okay.
is a substitute member. Keith Horgan is the main member on it. And for your information, he goes to every meeting anyway. So this is just for a substitute, for backup.
No, but I'm just trying to ascertain, Councillor Lay did write and
Yes.
resigned from this position.
Okay, with that clarity, I'm seeing no other nominations, so I declare Councillor Huffer as the substitute representative on the Rural Services Network. And we move to the last item in the public domain, which is the forward agenda plan, which is on item 19, which is put on page 203 for those who are following the page numbering. any comments from officers on the forward agenda plan you want to
Can I
highlight?
can I just add that after today's meeting, there's the economic development funding update that was mentioned, and also well, it won't be the equality, but it'll be the diversity and inclusion policy in the January one as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, members, on the Councillor Alison Whelan?
I was under the impression we were going to have a update to the whistleblowing policy.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I had done the scanning and they were going to take quite some time to do the policy review. So I'm just waiting for that to come back, and I propose to bring that to the November committee.
Okay, you're happy with that, Councillor Whelan? Councillor Kane?
In the light of the previous item where we looked at a forecast overspend on the bereavement centre, should not an update on that come to the November meeting? Indeed, shouldn't you have an update at every meeting?
Excuse me.
Councillor Bailey?
Can we just be clear? We don't have a forecast overspend on the bereavement centre.
Yeah, at the moment, we'll take that away and look at that, I think, yeah. Members, any other, I'm seeing no other comments, in which case, sorry, did you want to speak, Councillor Trapp? No. Okay. Thank you for that. In which case, that closes the public session of the meeting, and I'd like to thank those members of the press and public who've been watching online, and hopefully you've enjoyed what you've heard, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of your evening. The next meeting of the Finance and Assets Committee public session is the 28th of November. Thank you very much. I know we haven't got a great deal in exempt, but did members want a couple of minutes whilst we turn off the line, or we just crack straight through? Okay. We'll wait till Karen lets us know we're offline. I have to reread that again. But for those members of the public and press online who are still watching, we need to have a vote on the exclusion of public, including representatives of the press, that the press and public be excluded during the consideration of the remaining items, because it is likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that if members of the public were present during the items, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information of categories 1 and 3 of Part 1, Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. Are members happy that we go into an exempt session? If you want to show that you're in favour of that. Thank you, members. We are now, so I'm now closing the meeting on the public sector, and hopefully those members of the public who are watching still watching, enjoyed what they saw. Thank you very much.